Hello and welcome to this episode of the Metal Verbalizers podcast. I am Johan Verbalizer, and today I have a new great band to recommend, Sublind. The band Sublind is a thrash metal band from Luxembourg and was founded in 2005. Sublind has been playing alongside some well-known names within metal, such as Exodus, Death Angel, Tankard, Warbringer, Benediction, Crysis, Nervosa, Dustbolt, etc. Before going further into this episode, I would like to quickly mention that Sublind contacted us and requested an episode from us. We would like to really thank Sublind for reaching out to us, and it means a lot to us. When it comes to the band's influences, it is very clear that Sublind is really inspired by old school thrash metal. They are the type of thrash metal band that is really praising the beer drinking and moshing ways of the old school thrash scene. So some of Sublind's biggest influences are most likely, bands like Exodus and Testament, for example. I think they can really hear the Exodus inspiration in songs like High Speed Hangover. I would personally say that Sublind mainly reminds me of Exodus on albums like, for example, Tempo of the Damned, Blood In Blood Out, and like Persona Non Grata, for example. Not so much their older albums like, Bonded by Blood, Pleasure of the Flesh, or Fabulous Disaster, for example. I think that Sublind has that kind of like aggressive, heavy approach that kind of like it's kind of similar. It kind of like reminds me of kind of how Exodus is sounding on those kind of like later albums that I mentioned earlier. I also kind of think that a song like For Those About to Riot by Sublind, for example, reminds me of Creator a lot. I think it is like with this kind of like really fast and really intense and aggressive sound that makes me really think about the band like Creator. So I would like say that if you like old school thrash metal in general, and especially if you like bands such as like Exodus, and the albums I mentioned earlier, you should definitely check out Sublind. Regarding the image of Sublind, that too seems to be very based on old school thrash metal and old school metal in general, I guess. Looking at band pictures and stuff like that with Sublind, they're going for the kind of like band shirt and sneakers kind of look. Kind of like similar to how many thrash metal bands and also I would say kind of like death metal bands as well kind of looked like in the 80s and 90s. I think that you can also tell pretty well, what type of band you could kind of like expect Sublind to be by looking at the members' shirts on pictures containing the members. They're like wearing shirts with bands such as, for example, Dark Angel, Suicidal Angels, Slayer, Sodom, Schizophrenia, etc. And as you probably maybe noticed, if you're into these bands, is that they're also a little bit newer bands, not only like old school thrash, but also a little bit newer bands, which like a band like Suicidal Angels, for example, kind of also has that really like heavy and aggressive type of thrash. I mean, if I really think about it, it's kind of like if you like Suicidal Angels, I guess, could also be kind of this band that if you like them, you should definitely check out Sublind, I think. And I would also say the same about a band like Schizophrenia. If you like Schizophrenia, you would definitely like Sublind, I think. When it comes to the lyrics that Sublind are writing for their music, I think it's kind of like for anybody who sort of like somewhat knows a lot about like old school thrash metal, probably has a pretty good idea what Sublind is writing lyrics about. You know, not the least with like song names such as High Speed Hangover, Boozing Bastard Blues, and Comfortably Drunk. So yeah, a lot about alcohol and drinking and stuff like that. Also, something I would like to add here is the name of the band's latest 2023 release, the Xenosilizophobic Sessions. As I understand it, the term xenosilizophophobia means basically the fear of having an empty beer glass. So it's a pretty funny and very fitting name for an album by a band such as Sublind. I don't think I've ever heard that term before. I don't think I've ever heard it before seeing this album's title. I have, however, experienced having an empty beer glass, so I guess I can really relate to the term and album name in that sense. But Sublind also have song names with a more political and kind of like thought-provoking tone, such as songs like Revolution Execution, False Existence, and For Those About to Riot, for example. I think that when it comes to the band's releases since its start in 2005, Sublind has been pretty active. In 2007, they released an EP titled The Beginning of the End. In 2010, they released another EP titled Thrash It. In 2014, they released their debut full-length titled Thrashing Delirium. And in 2017, they released the single High Speed Hangover. And then to follow that up in 2023 with the release of their second full-length album titled The Xenosilizophobic Sessions. I have a big feeling that the Xenosilizophobic Sessions will be very high up on the list of best thrash albums of 2023. And to be honest, it is one of my personal favorites, so I think the odds of it being very, very high is very, very big. So it is definitely not an album that you should sleep on. I would encourage you to check it out immediately if you haven't already. And if you have checked it out, you know that it's great, so you should listen to it again. Later this August and autumn, Sublind will be playing shows in Luxembourg and Germany. For exact dates, I would refer you to Sublind's social media accounts. And one of the shows Sublind will be playing is at the metal festival in Luxembourg called Metal Festival Kopstal. So if you can show up to any of these shows, I would definitely recommend that you do. And if you can't, then I would recommend that you listen to their albums and support them in other ways. Having said that, I believe it's a great way to end the episode. We at Metal Verbalizers really appreciate that you've been listening to this episode until the end. And if you enjoyed this episode, then it would be great if you'd like to give us a follow and help us spread the word. This way you can support both us as a podcast, but also the bands that we are verbalizing. We will be back next week with more verbalizing.